Hello and welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records and I talk about why I love them. Last week we were listening to Obla Di Obla Da by the Beatles. And this week we're going to be moving away from the ska and into something completely different. And coincidentally, so is the band that we will be listening to today. This week is a classic album week, which means that the album that we'll be listening to today was chosen by you, by poll, on my posts tab. The album in question went to number 1 in the US, the UK, where else? Italy, Australia, Canada, and the lead single went to number 1 in the US and the UK. And this performance, the album that is, prompted Rolling Stone magazine to remark that this was the first British new wave band to make it big in the States, and that they were possibly the biggest band in the world. The band in question is The Police, and the album is 1983's Synchronicity. It sounds like this.
Walking in your footsteps.
Well, the telephone is ringing. Is that my mother on the phone? Nobody but us. Nobody but us. Another suburban family morning. Every breath you take, there's a little black spot on the sun today. You consider me the young apprentice. Keep the summer with you.
When I listen to this album, I hear it as magic. This album sounds magical to me. And so today we're going to be asking and hopefully answering the question of where does this magic come from? And if all goes well, we will together draw a roadmap to the magic of Synchronicity by the Police. But first, who are these police of which we speak? Well, for a start, I'm pretty sure it's not the same police that NWA are singing about. So far as I know, anyway. The Police are one of the best-selling bands of all time. They've won 6 Grammys. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2003. And they have made both Rolling Stone and VH1's lists of 100 greatest artists of all time. 4 of their 5 albums have also made Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time, which I had a much easier time of saying than the other list. They formed in 1977, and they are a power trio consisting of Stuart Copeland on drums, Andy Summers on guitar. He's actually quite a lot older than the other two. I think he played with Eric Burdon and the Animals. And principal songwriter and bassist Sting, looking ruggedly handsome in this photo. I mean, I suppose they all are. It's a flattering photograph. Their first 4 albums produced a string of hits, including but not limited to Roxanne, Message in a Bottle, Walking on the Moon, Don't Stand So Close to Me, and Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. They play in a style that's been described as a hybrid between like reggae and pop and jazz and punk, although personally I think the punk thing is more of an aesthetic of the band rather than a genre of music that they explore. And the last thing is that it is commonly held that the band hate each other's guts. But from what I can tell from interviews and whatnot, they have more of a like brotherly relationship with each other, and with that will come conflict and love.
We're like this all the time, you know?
This is it.
We'd be like
This is
this
what you
tomorrow.
get.
I think they like each other well enough, even if they hate each other's guts.
I tell you what, should we film me whooping Sting?
Yes,
That would be good, wouldn't it?
They're all very skilled musicians. They're also very strong-willed individuals with a clear creative vision. Sting, as the songwriter, brings a sort of precision and structure to the music, whereas Stuart Copeland brings more of a frenetic energy and spontaneity. And if you were to ask me, which presumably you are because you did click on this video, I would say that part of the charm, part of the enchantment of this band lies in the tension between these elements and in the ability of the musicians and their skill in translating that tension into music. So that's the police. Those are the characters. Let's begin drawing our roadmap. We're going to place our first marker at one Carl Jung. Yes, that Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, an influential psychiatrist and academic. He is probably most well known for the concept of archetypes in psychology, commonly referred to as Jungian archetypes, although I have no idea why they call it that. He is also responsible for the psychological concept of synchronicity. Now, it's a very complex and esoteric theory, idea, but in my very rudimentary understanding, in the context of the human mind and Carl Jung's research, synchronicity refers to the recognition of coincidences that seem to be meaningful. And Carl Jung maintained that this had psychiatric value in that it could make apparent to the conscious mind elements of the unconscious. Jung worked closely with a physicist named Wolfgang Pauli on his concept of synchronicity, but the work that they did really flirted with the confines of scientific definition because their theories could be neither proven nor falsified. And thankfully, that's all I have to say about that today. With no disrespect to Jungian psychologists, we are here to talk about music. Before we do that, though, we have another marker to put down, and we are going to drop it at the feet of one Arthur Koestler, who was inspired by Jung's idea of synchronicity and used that as the kicking off point for a book called The Roots of Coincidence that he wrote. In this book, he suggests that conventional science should broaden its definitions, its limitations, and open its arms to concepts like extrasensory perception and the paranormal and psychokinesis and that sort of thing. Okay, final marker is Sting. This man who has no shirt on. I mean, he's famous for other things, other than taking his shirt off. Our friend Sting reads this book, The Roots of Coincidence, and he thinks, I'm going to use this as inspiration for our next album. So in our journey from Jung to Koestler, the concept of synchronicity moves from the edges of academia firmly into pseudoscience. And in moving from Koestler to Sting, synchronicity becomes the stuff of magic. It's reflected in the title, in the lyrics, in the themes, in the mythical creatures, which we'll come to know over the course of this episode. This album is one of magic. I'll explain my thoughts on the matter in due course. First, though, let's talk about the album itself. It was recorded over 6 weeks at George Martin's AIR Studios in Montserrat. I'm not sure if he calls them AIR Studios or AIR Studios. It's unclear. It's an acronym. And also, say it with me, kids, will it Beatles? Yes, it will! The album was recorded live from 3 rooms with each band member in a different room. Sting said it was because his bass sounded like a frog farting through headphones, but Hugh Padgham, who was co-producing the album, adds to that there was also a social component to that. And apparently there were tensions. We did refer to the tensions earlier. There were tensions in the recording of this album. Sting and Stewart, that's this guy, mischievous scamp. He reminds me of Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream. He embodies that kind of energy. Anyway, the two of them got into a bit of a fisticuffs over Every Breath You Take because Sting wanted to dictate the arrangement of it and he wanted it to be something that was sparse and light, empty. And that had the unintended side effect of restricting what Stewart could do on the drums. And he was unhappy about it. Fortunately, a meeting was called, everyone sat down, they had whatever the police's version of a feeling circle is, and according to the producer, it was that meeting that saved the album. This same producer, Hugh Padgham, was actually on the brink of walking out on the project himself. Producer Hugh also notes that it was that tension that made for such a brilliant album. There's one more point I'd like to cover before we dive into the music, and that is that the sequencing as it appears on the record now is not what was originally intended. I'll let Andy Summers explain. We had this section for Synchronicity, which we referred to as the Loch. We were going to have it at the end of Synchronicity 1. It was supposed to be the Loch Ness Monster, and then it would go into Synchronicity 2, but we couldn't really get it to work. Miles Copeland didn't like it. It was too psychedelic for him. Now, I have to disagree with Miles Copeland on this one. He was manager of the band and also Stewart's brother. I think he should have let the musicians do the music, you know? It's what they're good at. Now, as I stated at the outset, and I suppose I've kept up throughout this episode so far, I view this album as one of, peculiar alchemy. And given that context, I actually think the original sequencing of this album makes the most sense and flows the best from one track to the next. So on that note, that's the order in which we're going to listen to it. According to Stewart Copeland, Sting has never actually explained the link between the tracks Synchronicity 1 and Synchronicity 2. I'll let him explain himself. In his words, I quote, "I've had Sting up against the wall on this issue before and he point blank refuses to explain the connection. None of us in the band can even remember which one's which. The only way I can keep them straight is that Sync 1 has Sting's cool sequencer part." Alright folks, we have drawn up our roadmap to the magic. It is now time to dissect how that music is made. We'll start with the lyrics. Synchronicity 1 is our album opener. The lyrics read like an incantation. It feels like the album opens on a spell. For example, we have lines like, "With one breath, with one flow, you will know synchronicity." And our chorus is like a laundry list of concepts. A connecting principle linked to the invisible, almost imperceptible, something inexpressible, science insusceptible, logic so inflexible, causally connectable, yet nothing is invincible. It's hypnotizing and it's relentless, and it has this double toil and trouble kind of cadence to it. I know it's not an iambic pentameter, but you get my point, I'm sure. You're smart. Synchronicity 2, by contrast, tells us a parallel story. One is of this middle-class man who's experiencing existential anguish. And the parallel story as of something dark and mysterious emerging from a Scottish lake, presumably the Loch Ness Monster, as Andy told us earlier. Spoilers, Andy. The Loch song is instrumental, so nothing to discuss there. We'll come back to it. And given the lyrics of Synchronicity 1, I feel like I can't really call it Sync 1 because I'm not in the band. I'm not as cool as Stewart. Synchronicity 1. It feels like the spell that was being cast in that first track is what has awakened these dual beasts. In the second song, there's, the actual literal beast, the mythical beast, and then there's the roiling beast within the main character of the song who is slowly losing the plot. He's awakening to his own existential dread, and Sting actually sings it in a way that helps to illustrate that feeling. It begins in a far more calm place to where it ends. So beginning of the song sounds like this. By the end of it, he's singing like this. This character is spiraling. Meanwhile, many miles away, something crawls from the slime at the bottom of a dark Scottish lake. And finally, the song pans out, and we find that everyone is experiencing the same existential crisis. Relatable, that's how I feel in Rush Hour. So, those are the lyrics. They speak literally of the mystery and of the mythical creature and the mysticism. But I think the music does most of the legwork in making these tracks sound enchanting. Or enchanted. Both. We'll begin with Synchronicity 1, which is logical. Our song opens like this. I think that opening synth, that little sequencer that Stewart Copeland was talking about earlier, feels like there are little gremlins working behind the scenes to force the hands of fate. The sense of timing in the song is really unusual. It trips us up as we're listening to it. It sounds like every bar has an extra couple of beats. So instead of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's more of a like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Here's what I mean. Man, that really took all of my brain power to coordinate that. It's harder than it looks. Strongly recommend you try it at home. The timing of the introduction of the song is also really strange. It does the same thing. Instead of opening after 4 bars of the sequencer, 4 times, it's actually 6 times. And then the drums come in. There are a few stylistic elements that I think contribute to the feeling of sorcery on this track. The first is the tone of the synths. I'm lumping that in with the timbre of the cymbals on this track. Both are glittery, sparkly, high frequency, otherworldly. The drums on this track are absolutely powerhouse, but the cymbals are tinkly. They positively glitter. You can hear it really clearly in the beginning of the song. There are a lot of harmonies in the verse of the song. However, when we come to the chorus, there are two sets of harmonies and they cascade over each other. Like so. Here I go again with the interpretive dances. The result of that is that there's a place where they meet in the middle that becomes this cluster of notes, and it should be messy, but instead I would say that it has the impact of making you feel like you are in the thrall of something. It forms this stunning cluster chord. I'll show you what I mean. Like the first set of harmony sustains and is held when the second comes along, and they just interact in a way that shouldn't make sense, but does. And that to me feels like witchcraft. We also have two moments in the song where we modulate into something totally different. It's like a crash jump. Is that the word I'm looking for? I think it's called a crash jump in film. I don't know, I'm not a filmmaker. Last week, I made some sort of a muck-up of the audio on the video. Like 20 people in the comments told me that the audio was too quiet, which was helpful, but also it's worth remembering that this is a hobby of mine. And I don't have a team of editors and camera people. So, you know, we all make mistakes sometimes. I'll try and make sure I've corrected it this week. I hope it is to your liking. / it's free, so you're welcome. What was I doing? Right, modulations. Boom! We've landed in a totally different landscape musically. They've taken us to a new place. We have been picked up and thrown over there. Totally transported. It happens once here in the song. It happens again at the end of the song. We'll come back to the modulations. I have more to say on this. And then the song sort of scuttles cheekily away. For what I said about how delicate and almost brittle the cymbals sound, he is whacking the shit out of those skins, which I appreciate. I really love when you can hear how much power, how much muscle is going into a drum part. Here's what he had to say about it. It was a real Ramalama way of starting our set on tour, though it almost killed me to start with that kind of onslaught every night. It didn't kill him. He is still alive to this very day. Now let's have a quick listen to Loch, which was only released on the Super Deluxe version. Obviously, I don't have the Super Deluxe version, so we're gonna have to listen the boring modern way. Don't you just love how it washes over you? It envelops you. It feels like this spell that has been cast, again with the opening track, is taking hold, or is awakening the beast, as we mentioned earlier. It's the sound of the magic being put to work, I think. It's ethereal and it's expansive, and it feels almost like an altered state of consciousness, I think, to listen to it. And then, hypothetically, that will have led into Synchronicity 2, which opens like this. See, I really feel that the instrumental lock would have led so beautifully into the eerie, more mechanical instrumental opening of Synchronicity 2, which eventually kicks into this gear. That's a dark beginning to a song. For a start, the vocals are landing on unusual notes that sit outside of the chord that is being sung, especially the second note here. Oh! Isn't that beautiful? Never mind, take it away, Sting. Better. The way that the notes are delivered and sustained, and the echo that's put on them in post, make it feel like our protagonist, the song's protagonist, is screaming into the void, which ultimately is what he is doing. So it's, you know, illustrating our story for us. We have a number of abrupt shifts in this song, much like in the last one, our modulations. Here we go. The first one is coming out of the intro into the verse. We're picked up and scooped into the next section of the song by the bass and the guitar. Boom, we're into something new. I really love the work that the guitar and bass do in tandem during these verses. Together they create a tension that illustrates the feel of the song, doing the same thing rhythmically, but the notes are often a little bit dissonant. But also there's a tension between those elements in the song and the drums, because the guitar and the bass are very sort of slow, almost meditative, very composed. Whereas the drums maintain this steady, frenetic energy. There's also some cool stuff happening on the hi-hat, but, you know, as is Stewart's wont, that's his bread and butter, and we love him for it. This does two things. First, it's that tension that we mentioned right at the beginning of this episode with the structure and the precision from Sting and the spontaneity and the energy from Stewart. So there's that alchemy of the police happening right there. The other thing that's happening is that it's illustrating the dual nature of the character's existence, in that he is composed and calm on the outside, he goes to work, he does his job, and then on the inside, he is falling apart. He is succumbing to entropy. Before we know it, there's another abrupt change of feel. Totally different feel, totally different key. Where are we? As listeners, it makes us feel like we are being thrown about by forces that are outside of our control, as is the protagonist in the song. He's got his job, he's got these things that he has to do, and none of them are things that he wants to be doing. But it also, I think, captures that feeling of being spellbound, of being cast around, being compelled by these outside forces that you have no control over. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's the fun of it. That's why we're here, right? When we reach the chorus, the feeling changes again. It sort of subdues in a way. It does the opposite of what you would think a chorus is going to do. It drops the energy down a little bit, and it introduces this high, eerie, menacing synth. Boom! Mythical creature. Out of nowhere. And before we're flung back into the verse, back into our daily life, the 9-to-5 work week, etc., we revisit the introduction, except this time with added shrieking and groaning noises on the guitar. Very creepy. Nope, I'm wrong. It's after the second chorus. Are we really in control of our own destinies? And we end the song in that same place. It's sort of bookended. Begins and ends in the same way. And that ending is unresolved. What does the Loch Ness Monster do? Does the main character have a breakdown? We don't know. We never find out. Sting is inscrutable. So, in sum, those modulations and tone shifts that we've been listening to in these three songs carry throughout the rest of the album. It's the thread that links all of the other songs. It sustains that feeling that we've been enchanted, that this whole album listening experience is a kind of spell. And I think that is in part because it evokes the feeling as a listener of being controlled by some sort of puppet master or wizard. We just have to hang on for the ride and hope we don't fall off. The continued use of those modulations and also of the same sorts of timbre, the sparkling synths, the glittering cymbals, the really trebly, washy guitar, makes all of the songs on the album feel familiar even if we haven't heard them yet. And I think it is in the combination of all of these elements that the album is able to embody a sort of pop mysticism, a peculiar synchronicity. And that's it for me. If you enjoyed this episode or you would like to support any of the weird things I do, I will leave a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you are most welcome to make a donation if you wish, but no pressure, my friends. I understand that life is hard. Life is expensive. And in light of that, genuinely, thank you so much to everybody who has made a donation or signed up as a member. You mean the world to me, and I really appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're curious about what any of my original music sounds like, I'll leave a link in the description to that as well. My band Tweed has a new album coming out in a few months' time. Very exciting. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week. Have a great weekend! And they are comprised of... What? And of psychology, synchronicity... Producer Hugh also mentions that... Nope. Producer Hugh also notes that it was that kind of... According to Stuart Copeland, stink. Who was calling me? Private number? That's not helpful. If you're curious about what any of my original music sounds... Oh, pop. That was a good click.